On target. Way high. Right. There you go. One of the edges. It's hard to tell from this angle.
I'm not the biggest fan of LPVOs. I think fundamentally the LPVO is a compromise option. It's never going to be my first choice when building out a rifle. However, I think they do have some utility as either a cost-effective optics system or as a weight-effective optics system. This optic is a Trijicon Credo 1-4 with the segmented BDC 55 grain second focal plane reticle. This checks both of the cost-effective and weight-effective boxes for me, and in theory, it's a lot of what I'm looking for in an LPVO. However, what I want in an LPVO is maybe not what the average buyer is looking for in an LPVO, so we'll talk about that really quickly. Like most people, I want a good 1x on the LPVO, but a lot of people take that to mean red dot bright illumination, which is not important to me. I think reticle design is more important than illumination on the 1x. So a good 1x setting on an LPVO to me just means that the image is flat and true to 1x, and it means that the reticle design is effective at 1x. The other thing I want out of an LPVO is reticle utility. I want the reticle to actually be useful, and almost all of the LPVOs out there that have a really nice illuminated reticle don't have a good reticle. For example, basically all of the scopes that use a red LED illuminated dot. They can get very nearly red dot bright, which is impressive. However, a lot of those have really simple reticles that don't give you a lot of information or utility. That includes the Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 1-6. It includes the Trijicon Credo HX 1-6, specifically the one that has the LED illumination. It includes the EOTech Voodoo 1-8. It includes the Steiner PX4i. It includes the Razor 1-6. All of those scopes have very bright red dot style illumination, married to an unfortunately simplistic reticle that I just don't find useful in any way. The last thing I want out of an LPVO is weight efficiency. The Trijicon Credo 1-4 is fairly lightweight. It's about 17 ounces without the mount, so it is quite a lot heavier than, for example, an ACOG. However, it's still quite a lot lighter than a whole lot of other LPVOs out there. This one is mounted in an Aero Precision ultralight mount, which weighs a little bit under 4 ounces, so our total weight is a little bit over 20 ounces. That means the optic and the mount together still weigh less than a lot of other LPVOs do on their own. The purpose of this optic to me was to serve as an ACOG replacement on a lightweight 16-inch AR. Compared to my beloved Trijicon TA11 3.5 power ACOG, this one has similar top range magnification with the addition of a low end, but it still retains all the utility of a Trijicon BDC reticle. I know you can piggyback mount an RMR on top of an ACOG to get some semblance of 1x performance, but I always find it to be really borderline unusable and pretty much just an awful shooting experience. So I would much rather have the 1x of an actual dedicated red dot or the 1x of a decent LPVO over that piggyback red dot on top of an ACOG or another scope. So how does the Trijicon Credo 1-4 actually work as an ACOG replacement? Well, I think I'll start with the good stuff, because there's quite a lot of good stuff about this scope, and then we'll finish with the bad stuff just to ruin your day and mine. The main thing I like about this scope is the reticle design. This is the version with the 55 grain BDC segmented circle. So you have a segmented circle around the middle of the reticle. That's the part that illuminates. You also have a large outer crosshair that guides your eye to the center of the scope. This is a second focal plane or rear focal plane design, so the reticle stays the same size no matter what the magnification setting is. So on 1x, you get this very large reticle that guides your eye to the center of the scope. Very good for fast target acquisition. You don't need bright illumination because the reticle is big and bold and etched, Brock. It's etched. It's great to use on 1x, and the image quality on 1x is fantastic. Very flat, very bright, very clean. So you're not reliant on batteries and illumination to get a really fast, clean, bright, and usable 1x. Leading down from the center of the reticle are the BDC subtensions. There are horizontal hashes that are numbered for distance. These hashes can be used for ranging, just like the ones on most ACOG models. The width of the horizontal hash mark is the same as shoulder width at the corresponding range, so you can range and immediately engage on the appropriate BDC point. Because this is second focal plane, those subtensions are only accurate at the maximum magnification. However, that's only 4x, so it's very usable. You're never going to want to dial back from 4x and still use the BDC, because at the ranges you're using this BDC, you want all the magnification you can get. The scope is also available in a nearly identical 1:6 version that has the exact same reticle, albeit it's scaled appropriately for 1:6. That version might actually be the better option. It weighs barely any more than the 1:4. The 6 is still a totally usable maximum magnification. You're probably not going to need those BDC hashes at anything below 6, so might as well take that extra 2x. You can get these with either red or green illumination. It almost doesn't matter. The illumination is reticle style. It's not just a center bright dot. It actually illuminates a portion of the reticle, and it's very weak. It's more intended for the twilight or dusk shots. It's not really for use as a red dot. This BDC reticle is very similarly calibrated to my favorite ACOG reticle, the TA11 reticle, that's designed to shoot M193 out of a 16-inch barrel. M193 is good ammunition and it's easy to get. 16-inch barrels are almost ubiquitous. It's sort of a match made in heaven. The TA11 ACOG with the M193 reticle has the chevron style ACOG reticle, and it's also calibrated in meters, not in yards. This one is calibrated in yards. You zero at 100 yards, and the hashes correspond to the appropriate yardage. If anything, that's even better for me. My brain works in imperial, and it always will, and there's nothing I can do about that, so yards makes more sense intuitively to me than meters does. Trijicon is still completely fucking allergic to putting proper BDC information on their website, or even in their manuals sometimes, so this one is actually labeled as a 223 55 grain BDC. That's objectively not true. I don't think you're going to find a 223 load that produces the velocities required to match this BDC. It's very clearly intended for M193 out of a 16-inch barrel. So 223 may be the proper caliber, but it's not the proper cartridge. You should be using this scope with 55 grain M193 556. Okay, so that's the reticle, the beating heart of the optic, and pretty much the entire reason that I bought this thing in the first place. The other nice feature of the Trijicon Credos is the build quality. These are just really nicely made scopes. These scopes are made in Japan, like pretty much all mid to high-end scopes, because Japan is where glass comes from, and Japan is where all the optics factories are. The controls, the layout, and the design of the scope are phenomenal overall. The turret caps are excellent, great knurling, very precisely machined threads. The turrets themselves are actually 1/4 MOA click, so you can adjust them more finely than the typical half MOA per click on a lot of low magnification LPVOs. They have an integrated return to zero system. You just pop the cap out, rotate it back to zero, click it back in. The zoom ring is extremely smooth. It includes a low profile throw lever that you can install in multiple positions, or you can remove it, and it includes a little dummy plug that you can put in there instead if for some reason you just don't want a throw lever. The throw lever is basically perfect. It's exactly the right size. It doesn't get in the way, but it gives you an excellent way to adjust magnification on the fly. The diopter ring is also very solid. It adjusts smoothly, and then it stays exactly where you put it. You don't have to worry about your diopter setting wandering around as the rifle gets bumped around in a case or slung on your back or something. The illumination control on the side is excellent. It has an off position in between each of the on settings. It also resists turning accidentally very well, and it has a nice detent, although it's not very loud and clicky. So there you go. So far this thing sounds pretty awesome. It has a great 1x, a perfect reticle design, excellent controls and quality throughout, and it's one of the lightest LPVOs on the market. The only problem is the image quality is absolutely atrocious. When you crank this thing up to 4x, the image turns into soup. It's just outrageously bad. There's some weird property of the way the scope is designed where if your eyeball shifts even a fraction of a millimeter off of dead center, the entire image turns into just straight up Vaseline. I've never seen that on any other optic, including much cheaper 1:4s, including Strike Eagles, the Burris RT6. And this is not a cheap optic. These things have an MSRP of about $1,000, a street price of maybe around $700. Slightly higher, perhaps $100 extra if you go for the 1:6 version. So this is not a top-end LPVO, but it's certainly not a budget scope. I compared the image quality of the Credo 1:4 side by side with the Vortex Viper PSD Gen 1 1:4. That scope really is very impressive for the money. If it wasn't for the exposed, unlocked target turrets, I probably never would have even bothered to buy the Credo in the first place. Up close, the Credo 1:4 is much more impressive than an old gen Vortex Viper 1:4. However, like I said, at maximum magnification past a certain distance, the image quality on the Credo 1:4 turns into just some kind of disgusting Vaseline soup. It looks like an oil slick in an apartment parking lot. It looks like pork fat beating up on the surface of a bowl of ramen. It looks like the sneeze guard on an Izzy's salad buffet in the 1990s. It was so bad that I actually sent the scope back to Trijicon for warranty work to see if there was something wrong with it. Around the same time that I did that, Sea-Doos, the best optics reviewer on YouTube, had a Credo 2-10 that had a similar problem. Past a certain distance, the image quality at maximum magnification on his scope was just atrocious. He sent his in to Trijicon. They said it had a parallax defect. They replaced the entire scope and sent it back to him, and the replacement was maybe a little bit better. The same thing happened with my scope. I sent them back my original one. They said it was completely defective, and they offered to replace it. My original one was the red illumination version. They didn't have any of those available and had no expectation of restock, so the version that they sent me as a replacement is the green reticle. I should say they didn't just surprise me with that. They asked if I was okay with green illumination. I said yes, because the illumination almost doesn't matter to me on this scope at all. Although it's worth pointing out that as bad as the red illumination is, the green illumination is even worse. It's almost completely invisible. It's basically a waste of a CR2032 battery. You might as well just leave it the fuck out. The image quality on the replacement scope looks literally exactly the same as the one that I sent them. No difference. I don't actually think the other one was defective. I think they're probably just aware that these scopes don't look very good at high magnification, and they can't fix it. So they'll just try to replace it and see if that'll shut you up. This really is one of the worst scopes ever made. God damn.
Dude, I am completely rethinking my Strike Eagle review because of how bad that is.
So where does that leave us? This scope is almost perfect for me. It's almost exactly what I'm looking for in an LPVO. And unfortunately, due to the poor image quality at maximum magnification, it's basically useless. I've heard that other versions of the Credo LPVOs are better. For example, the Credo 1-8, formerly the AccuPower 1-8, is supposedly a really excellent scope. I've also heard that the image quality on the 1-6s is pretty good. However, it's almost always in reference to the Credo 1-6 HX, which has the LED illumination, doesn't have the same reticle, so it's kind of a moot point. I'm really only here for the reticle. If I can't get that good reticle, there are other LPVOs I would rather spend my time and money on. So does this mean I have to go crawling back to the ACOG? Probably. I don't think there are any other optic manufacturers on the market who have the same range and selection of BDCs as Trijicon. Obviously, Trijicon is willing to poop out 194 models of ACOG to see what sticks, and somewhere in that shotgun pattern of reticles is the M193 BDC that works for me. This experience has left me extremely skeptical of Trijicon's ability to make a magnified scope. I think it's just not their wheelhouse. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below. If you'd like to support this channel, there are links in the video description. One of them to Subscribestar, where you can give me money and get access to early videos, as well as interesting arguments that I have with Mr. Brassfax. You can also click on relevant Amazon affiliate links in the description. I only put those in there when I find it very humorous to do so. Sometimes you'll see them, and sometimes you won't. It's not really worth very much money, so I mostly just do it when I think it's hilarious. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Jesus fucking Christ.
My ears!